All right. I am not going to bother hooking the computer back up because we are coming close to lunchtime. So instead of trying to squeeze something in 10 minutes time, I do have a couple of note items of things, some notes that I took during Joe's presentation that I think are some really potentially useful things. Maybe I will hook up my computer so that I can show you something on their website. I cannot talk up enough some of the resources that Contemporary Controls has made available on their website related to BACnet, related to Sedona. They really have some great videos that just walk through it, especially for kind of as primers before workshop or lab exercises and stuff like that, specifically related to stuff like BACnet. That could be a huge opportunity. And I don't think that was one of the things that Joe didn't talk up enough, in all reality, for our group. So. I'm playing. There we go. Their website, if you didn't catch it earlier, was ccontrols.com. Sorry, just remembered another thing I needed to talk to you about. I'm going to hit one of the products that Joe mentioned in his presentation. I'm not familiar with these top two, the bigger modules. Those are really interesting. Those are new to me. But I have used these Cube I/O modules. These are actually a really small module. They're DIN rail mount. They're like, these skinnier ones are like an inch and a half wide is all they are. They are not an intelligent device. They are simple inputs and outputs. Okay, they come in a BACnet flavor and a Modbus flavor, and they're not that expensive. So from a practicality standpoint, in the field, we use devices like this to expand the I/O capability of a given controller. Again, that requires the controller to be able to have client power, especially on the BACnet side. So, you do have to keep that in mind. Also, we can use it for something like the BAS View that doesn't have any I/O. If we just need to tag an extra point onto a system or something, something that is not what we would refer to as a critical point, but useful data, something like that. Add monitoring to a fridge or a freezer or something in a building, something like that. Okay, they're pretty friendly to set up, not hard, fun to work with. So if you're looking for something to add just a little thing to make your students think a little bit more, using these as BACnet MSTP devices to deal with the MSTP networking could be an easy win, especially if you've got one of the BAS22CR. That's the one that can do the client action as well. That's a really handy thing. And if you want to dip your toes into the Modbus aisle, that's another option. I am not knocking the ACI sensor that Connie used. I buy a lot of ACI products. That thermostat on the wall is an ACI product. They do a great job.
They don't have BACnet IP in those.
Not that I am aware of. I think on the larger modules, they do have BACnet IP. Yeah. So, and I'm not going to guess on what their prices are right now. That's something you can find out later. Okay? But I did want to mention that because Joe showed those as part of his presentation, and that could be a fun toy for classes. Okay?
So the MSTP pricing on those IL cubes runs between 155 and 275.
Okay. So depends on what it's set up for. The digital input ones are the cheapest, or used to be the cheapest. So, but it all depends on what you're trying to do. Joe? Absolutely, Joe.
Yeah, going up to the other modules, the reason I mentioned GC5, and the reason I brought these modules in is because they are configurable. And by that, just like on the controllers, you have universal inputs where you can configure them for voltage and contact closure and resistance. Well, with the ones up there, the two ones on the top, you can configure. Not all points are configurable. Some of the modules have configurable points, and then there's mixtures of configurable inputs or discrete inputs, and then there's analog out, relay out. So there's a bunch of modules that exist. Also, the ones on top are the serial modules, and they support either BACnet serial or Modbus serial in the same module. You don't need a different module. And then the ones on the bottom are IP based. So if you want to connect them directly to a BAS Control 22CR, again with the client, then you can use the NI functions and you can communicate back and forth to the I/O module. And you don't need a router. If you go with the ones below, and if you want to talk to them, you're going to need a router to convert the IP to the serial and vice versa. So there was a reason to do the ones on the top, okay? Just to make life easier in the real world.
Thank you for that clarification, Joe. Other comments, questions? All right. The next one I wanted to talk about, again, this is from related to something Joe showed us in his presentation, that BACnet detection tool. Super powerful, super handy, and man, that so waves the flag of how insecure BACnet is that it's phenomenal. Because you load that on your computer, and I would, if you can load a file onto your computer, I would encourage you, when you go home, to jump on your school's network and run the BACnet detection tool and see what you can see. Okay? Hopefully, you're not going to see anything. Okay? But the number of buildings you can walk into where you can see things, it is mind-boggling. Okay? And if the controls technicians have done their job properly, you're not going to be able to screw something up to the point of damaging things. But that doesn't mean you can't screw things up to the point of messing up the building's functionality for a period of time. Okay? So, just putting that out there. Kind of a funny related story, not specifically BACnet, but anybody in here been in a Panera? Okay, they got Wi-Fi in Panera, right? It was really funny. For a period of about 1.5 years, I could walk into any Panera, connect to their Wi-Fi with my phone, and I would have one of my controls app pop up and say, hey, there's a KMC controller in this building. Do you want to connect to it and configure it? That was a BAS technician not doing their job properly. Okay? That was something they didn't set up securely from a configuration standpoint. They may not have known that it existed. But that was one of the funniest things. And I'm serious. That year I went to National Skills USA with students. So I was in a Panera here in Omaha. I was in a Panera over in Louisville, Kentucky. So it was like one of those things where I was like, oh, I guess it's not just a regional thing. But these are the kind of things that they're funny stories, right? But they're very illustrative of things that our students need to be aware of. So, Okay. But yeah, seriously, get the BACnet detection tool, go home, run it, see what shows up. Okay. And then another resource that I was actually forgot to mention, and I'm really surprised that Andy, the president of BACnet International, did not mention when he was giving his presentation, or if he did mention it, I missed it. There's a Join Now button on BACnet International. Okay? They have, once you become a member with them, they give you a huge amount of resources. They're another one like Contemporary Controls. They've got a newsletter you can sign up for that gives you, lets you know about events going on, updates, what the BACnet committee is actually working on, sort of things. And it's free. It's free for you. It's free for your students. Okay? So it just, there's some real resources hidden back here in the login that really are worth some value. Some of them you've got to have some intention behind finding, but they're handy. Honestly, I think most of Contemporary Controls BACnet videos are a better explanation for our students. But if you need technical documentation, papers, case studies, stuff like that, they've got some of that in here that, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, may be of more use to you for whatever. Okay? So, like I said, I was really, if Andy said it and I missed it, I apologize, but I don't think he did. So. All right. That's my notes on stuff that so far I've remembered that got missed or needed to comment on.